I opened the door expecting Chinese takeout. Instead, Vincent Moretti stood there with white roses and eyes that cataloged everything. My paint-stained fingers, my too-thin frame, the double lock I'd forgotten to engage. He said my name like he'd been practicing it, like it meant something. Emma Hartwell? I should have slammed the door. I should have called 911. But when you've been invisible for as long as I had, being seen, even by a stranger in a funeral suit holding flowers that seemed too innocent for hands like his, feels like oxygen after drowning. Who's asking? Someone who knows you're in trouble. The flowers trembled slightly. Not from his hands. They were steady, the kind of steady that comes from holding worse things than roses. But from the January wind cutting through my building's broken hallway window. Behind him, Boston's North End sprawled in dirty snow and Christmas lights no one had bothered taking down. It was the second week of January, and I'd been eating ramen for dinner for 6 days straight because my checking account had $43 until Friday. I'm not in trouble, I said. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Not yet. That's when I noticed the car idling at the curb. Black, expensive, the kind that doesn't belong on a street where people zip-tie their mufflers and pray they make it through winter. A man sat in the driver's seat, face obscured, but I could feel him watching. I should have closed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. Vincent Moretti walked into my apartment like he'd measured it from photographs. He moved around my thrift store furniture, my canvases stacked against walls because I couldn't afford frames, my life laid bare in 400 square feet of proof that dreaming doesn't pay rent. He didn't touch anything, didn't need to. His presence touched everything. He set the roses on my kitchen table. Water bled from their stems onto the laminate, forming a small pool that looked too much like the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to clean up. You live alone, he said. Not a question. Is that a crime? Depends on who's asking. He sat without being invited, those roses between us like a white flag in a war I didn't know I was fighting. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought, maybe 35. Dark hair cut precisely, dark suit cut the same way. A small scar bisected his left eyebrow, the only imperfection on a face that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood how damage could be beautiful. I know you, he said quietly. Emma Hartwell. 27. Graduated from Mass Art 4 years ago. Worked at 3 different restaurants. Currently at Rose's on Hanover. You paint. You're good. You're also 4 months behind on rent, and your landlord's cousin is a friend of mine, so I know you have until the end of February before you're evicted. My throat closed. Are you here to threaten me or help me? Because I can't tell the difference. Neither can I most days. The honesty landed between us like a third person at the table. He pulled out a business card, slid it across the water-stained surface. No name, just a phone number in embossed black letters. I don't know you, I said, even though my fingers were already reaching for the card. No. But I know you. And I know you're in trouble. You said that already. It bears repeating. I looked at the card, turned it over. Blank. What kind of trouble? The kind you don't see coming until it's already here. He stood, buttoned his jacket with the kind of efficiency that suggested he did everything in his life with that same economical grace. At the door, he paused, turned. Those dark eyes found mine, and I felt something in my chest shift, like furniture being rearranged in a room I thought I knew. When it happens, he said, and it will, call me. When what happens? But he was already gone. Footsteps echoing down the hallway, the expensive car pulling away from the curb before I could even process that he'd been here at all. Real, solid, dangerous. I threw the card in the trash, kept the roses. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying the conversation, his voice. The way he'd looked at me like I was a problem he was trying to solve. At 2 a.m., I gave up, made coffee, started working on the canvas I'd been avoiding for weeks. A self-portrait I couldn't quite get right. The woman in the painting looked like me, but emptier, like someone had scooped out everything essential and left only the outline. I was mixing titanium white with raw umber when I heard it. A sound at the door. Soft, deliberate. The slide of paper on old wood. I froze, brush suspended in air, heart suddenly loud enough to drown out the radiator's clank and hiss. Counted to 10, 20, 30. Then I walked to the door, each step feeling like a choice I couldn't take back. The note was folded once, pushed halfway under. Red ink on white paper. I picked it up with shaking hands. 3 words. Marcus's handwriting, I'd know it anywhere, had studied it in love notes and grocery lists and the apology letter he'd left when he moved out 6 months ago, taking my grandmother's jewelry and the last of my ability to trust. I'm still watching. The roses suddenly looked different. Less like peace offering, more like memorial flowers. I pulled Vincent's card from the trash, smoothed it against my jeans, stared at those numbers until they blurred. 3 days, I told myself. I'd wait 3 days. Prove I didn't need saving. Marcus left 2 more notes. Called from blocked numbers. Showed up at Rosa's and ordered soup he didn't eat. Just sat there watching me work until my hands shook so badly I dropped a tray of glasses. My manager sent me home early. Said I looked sick. I was sick with the kind of fear that starts in your stomach and spreads until even breathing feels like risk. On the 4th night, I called. He answered on the first ring. Like he'd been waiting. Like he'd known. Vincent? Yes. My voice cracked. I don't even know your last name. Moretti. Vincent Moretti. I think I need help. Silence. Long enough that I thought maybe he'd hung up. Maybe this had all been some elaborate mistake. Then, from now on, no one touches you. He said it like a promise, like a threat, like the kind of protection that costs more than money could ever measure. I didn't know it then, but I'd just made a deal that would rewrite every assumption I'd ever had about safety, about danger, about the difference between a cage and a sanctuary. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, card still in hand, and waited for whatever came next. Protection, I learned, is just control wearing a prettier mask. Vincent's men appeared like shadows the morning after my call. I woke to find a black sedan parked outside my building. Engine running, exhaust curling into the gray January air like smoke signals. The driver didn't introduce himself, just nodded when I left for work, followed 3 car lengths behind, waited outside Rosa's for my entire shift. You have an admirer, my coworker Jessica said, nodding toward the window. I didn't correct her. Didn't know how to explain that admiration and surveillance only look different from the outside. By day 3, I had a schedule I hadn't created, a driver who knew my shifts before I worked them, and an assistant, that's what Vincent called her, though Claudia looked more like someone who could kill you with a dessert fork and make it look elegant, who appeared at my apartment with groceries I hadn't ordered, a new phone with exactly 1 number programmed in, and a smile that suggested refusing would be unwise. Mr. Moretti wants to make sure you're comfortable, Claudia said, unpacking organic vegetables I'd never bought because they cost 3 times what I could afford. I was comfortable before? No, you were surviving. There's a difference. She wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. The fridge that had held condiments and hope now overflowed with actual food. My landlord mysteriously decided I could pay rent, whenever convenient. The electricity bill I'd been dodging got paid by an anonymous benefactor. My life was being reorganized by invisible hands, and I was supposed to be grateful. I called the number Vincent had given me. He answered immediately. Always immediately. I didn't ask for any of this. No. His voice was calm, reasonable, infuriating. You asked for help. This is what help looks like. This is what a cage looks like. A cage keeps you trapped. I'm keeping you alive. Learn the difference. I wanted to argue, wanted to throw the phone, scream, reclaim some autonomy. But that night, Marcus showed up at Rosa's again, sat in the same booth, ordered the same soup, watched me with eyes that had always seen too much and understood too little. When my shift ended, he followed me to the door. Emmy, he said, using the nickname I'd told him never to use again. We need to talk. We don't. I made mistakes. I know that. But I'm trying to fix things. His hand closed around my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to remind me he could. That's when Vincent's driver materialized from the sedan, stepped between us with the kind of presence that makes violence unnecessary because everyone can see it's optional. Right there, waiting to be chosen. The lady's ready to leave, he said. Wasn't asking. Marcus's grip loosened. He looked at the driver, at the car, at me. Something flickered across his face. Fear mixed with calculation. The expression of a gambler realizing the stakes just changed. You're making a mistake, Emmy. These people, you don't know what you're getting into. Neither do you, apparently. I got in the car. Didn't look back. Told myself the shaking in my hands was anger, not relief. Vincent called an hour later. Are you hurt? No. Did he threaten you? I thought about lying. Thought about all the times I'd minimized Marcus's behavior. Made excuses. Convinced myself that love and fear could coexist if I just tried harder to understand. He grabbed my wrist. The silence on the other end was different. Colder, like weather changing before a storm. That won't happen again. Vincent. Emma. That won't happen again. He hung up before I could ask what that meant, before I could tell him I didn't want anyone hurt on my behalf. But even as I thought it, I knew I was lying. Part of me, the part that had been scared for so long I'd forgotten what safety felt like, wanted exactly what Vincent was offering. Wanted someone to finally make the fear stop, even if the method scared me more than the threat. For 3 days, Marcus didn't appear, didn't call, didn't leave notes. I started to breathe easier, started to think maybe Vincent's warning had been enough. Then the envelope arrived. Claudia brought it up with my morning coffee, her face carefully neutral in the way that meant something was very wrong. This was downstairs. The doorman said it was hand-delivered. No return address. My name in typed letters. Inside, photographs. Me and Vincent. At my door that first night, in my kitchen. The angles were wrong. Too intimate, suggesting a relationship that didn't exist. Someone had been watching. Had seen Vincent enter my apartment. Had drawn conclusions. Had created a narrative from shadows and assumptions. The note was worse. You were chosen as a message, Emma. Not for who you are. For who's protecting you. Tell Vincent Moretti that Konstantin Volkov remembers. Tell him debts don't disappear just because you change cities. I read it 3 times. 4. The words didn't change. Didn't make more sense. Who's Konstantin Volkov? I asked Claudia. She took the envelope from my shaking hands, scanned the contents with professional efficiency, and made a call. Spoke in rapid Italian I couldn't follow. When she hung up, her expression was grim. Mr. Moretti is on his way. Claudia, don't leave this apartment. Don't answer the door for anyone except us. Understand? I understood that I'd stepped into something larger than Marcus's obsession. Understood that protection from one threat had exposed me to another. Understood that Vincent Moretti wasn't just some concerned citizen with resources. He was someone with enemies, with history, with debts that apparently included me now. Vincent arrived 20 minutes later. Took the photographs without speaking. Read the note with an expression I couldn't decipher. Finally. Konstantin. Who is he? Vincent looked at me. Then, really looked. And I saw something in his face I recognized because I'd seen it in my own mirror. The weight of past choices, of roads not taken, of moments that define you before you understand their significance. Someone I thought I'd left behind. And now he's using you to draw me out. The truth settled between us like winter cold seeping through old windows. I wasn't being protected. I was bait. Had been from the moment Vincent knocked on my door with those white roses and those knowing eyes. You should go, I said quietly. Walk away. Let him have whatever he wants from you. I'm not worth... Don't. Vincent's voice cut sharp. Don't finish that sentence. Why? I stood, anger finally breaking through fear. Why do you even care? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything, so why? Because I already lost someone, he said. The words came out flat, final. I lost her because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't willing to do what needed to be done until it was too late. I won't make that mistake again. The confession hung in the air between us. Outside, Boston continued its indifferent January existence. Cars honking, people rushing, the city turning without caring who got caught in its gears. Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it, and something in his expression shifted. What? I asked. He showed me the screen. A text from an unknown number. A video file. I pressed play. The footage was grainy, night vision green, my bedroom, me, sleeping, taken from an angle that meant someone had been inside, had stood there watching, had filmed me at my most vulnerable and wanted me to know it. The timestamp read, last night, 3:47 a.m. While Vincent's men watched the building. While I'd felt safe for the first time in weeks, someone had been in my room, standing over my bed, recording proof that all the protection in the world meant nothing if the threat was patient enough. The video ended with text overlay. You were chosen as a message. Vincent moved me that night. Not asked. Moved. Had Claudia pack my essentials while he made calls in Italian and Russian, languages of old violence and older grudges. By midnight, I was in a penthouse in the Seaport district, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a Boston I'd only ever seen from the ground, distant and glittering and utterly foreign. This is temporary, Vincent said, setting down my single suitcase in a bedroom larger than my entire apartment, until we understand what Constantine wants. He wants you. He wants me to react. There's a difference. I walked to the window, pressed my forehead against glass so clean it felt invisible. Below, the city sprawled in neat grids of light and shadow, everyone living their small, safe lives while I stood in a stranger's home, wearing yesterday's clothes, trying to remember when my life had become a noir film I never auditioned for. Tell me about her, I said. Vincent's reflection appeared in the glass behind mine, close enough to touch, far enough to maintain the distance he wore like armor. Who? The woman you lost. He was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Adriana. She was collateral damage in a war that wasn't hers. Constantine took her because I took something from him first. By the time I understood what was happening, she was already gone. Gone as in flowers and a headstone and 23 years old forever. The pain in his voice was old, but unhealed, the kind that scars tissue but never quite closes the wound. I turned to face him. His expression was carefully neutral, but his hands gave him away, clenched at his sides, white-knuckled, holding something invisible. I'm not her, I said softly. No, you're not, but you're in danger because of me, and that's the same story with different details. I won't. His phone rang. He checked it, frowned, answered. Quando? Where exactly? How many? He spoke in rapid Italian, but I'd learned to read his body language, the way his jaw tightened, the way his free hand moved to the gun I'd glimpsed beneath his jacket, the way he looked at me like he was already calculating exits and strategies and acceptable losses. We need to go, he said, ending the call. Go where? Somewhere I should have taken you 3 days ago. The drive took us out of the seaport, across the Fort Point Channel, into neighborhoods where Boston's skeleton showed through its skin. Warehouses and shipping containers and buildings that had been abandoned by everyone except people who needed darkness and discretion. Vincent's driver, I'd learned his name was Marco, navigated like he knew every pothole, every shortcut, every place where the law looked the other way. We stopped at a dock where the water looked thick with more than pollution. Men in expensive suits conducted business in the language of implied violence, handshakes that looked like threats, briefcases that probably didn't contain documents, transactions that would never appear on any ledger the IRS would see. Vincent opened my door himself, offered his hand. You need to see this, he said. So you understand what protecting you costs? I took his hand. Stepped into a world I'd only ever seen in movies, always from the safe distance of a theater seat and someone else's story. The warehouse smelled like salt water and motor oil and something metallic I tried not to identify. Men turned as we entered, assessed me with eyes that had seen everything and been impressed by nothing. One of them, older, gray at the temples, wearing a cashmere coat that probably cost more than my art degree, approached. Vincent. This is the girl. Emma, Vincent said. Emma Hartwell, Emma. This is Antonio Reggie. He runs the ports. Antonio kissed my hand with old-world formality. I knew your father. The world tilted. My father's been dead for 15 years. I know. He was a good man. Worked the docks before the accident. Always fair. Always honest. Vincent here. He's honoring that. Protecting Frank Hartwell's daughter. I looked at Vincent. He hadn't mentioned knowing my father. Hadn't mentioned that this protection might be about more than just Constantine and old grudges. You knew my dad? I knew of him, Vincent said carefully. Knew he was a good man who deserved better than a shipping accident that wasn't really an accident. The implication landed like a fist to the sternum. My father's death. The story I'd been told. Faulty equipment. Wrong place, wrong time. The kind of tragedy that happens when safety regulations meet corporate cost-cutting. But Vincent's tone suggested something else. Suggested purpose. Suggested someone had decided Frank Hartwell was expendable. Who? The word came out sharp. Who killed my father? Antonio and Vincent exchanged a look, an entire conversation in a glance. Later, Vincent said. Right now, I need you to understand what you're part of, what protecting you means. For the next hour, I watched. Shipments arrived and departed. Money changed hands in denominations I couldn't process. Men discussed territories and percentages and problems that needed solving with the kind of euphemisms that made violence sound like accounting. Vincent moved through it all with easy authority, commanding respect without demanding it, making decisions that would ripple into lives I'd never see. This was his world, not the penthouse overlooking the seaport, not the expensive suits and expensive cars. This, the docks at 2 a.m., the smell of salt water and dirty money, the weight of power that came from being willing to do what others wouldn't. And somehow, I'd become part of it. On the drive back, Vincent finally spoke. I lost someone because I tried to protect her without showing her the reality. Thought I could keep her separate from this. But secrets don't protect people. They just make them vulnerable. You deserve to see what you're involved in. So I can run. So you can choose. With actual information instead of pretty lies. I thought about that. About choice. About the difference between protection and imprisonment. Between safety and suffocation. The penthouse, I said. Is that where Adriana lived? Yes. And Constantine, did he take her from there? No. He took her from a cafe in the North End, broad daylight, 3 blocks from a police station, because I'd gotten comfortable. Thought the threat had passed. His voice carried the weight of years of second-guessing, of playing the same scene differently in his head, of all the ways he'd failed someone he'd promised to keep safe. I reached across the seat, touched his hand. He went still. Like touch was a language he'd forgotten. I'm not running, I said. Emma, I'm not running. But I need you to promise me something. What? Don't lie to me. Don't protect me from the truth. If I'm in this, I'm in it. All of it. He turned his hand, laced his fingers through mine. It was the first time he'd touched me with anything other than professional efficiency, and the contact sent electricity up my arm, settled somewhere behind my ribs. I promise, he said. We sat like that for the rest of the drive, hands linked, both of us holding on to something we couldn't quite name but were too afraid to release. The penthouse felt different when we returned, less like a cage, more like a sanctuary. I was exhausted but not ready to sleep, still processing everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned. Vincent walked me to the bedroom, paused at the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we figure out Constantine's next move. Vincent? He turned. Thank you for showing me. For not treating me like I'm made of glass. Something shifted in his expression. Softened. You're not glass, Emma. You're steel that hasn't realized its own strength yet. He left me there, closed the door quietly behind him. I changed into the sleep shirt Claudia had packed, brushed my teeth with the new toothbrush someone had placed in the bathroom, tried to pretend this was normal, that I belonged in a penthouse with marble counters and a man who commanded docks like kingdoms. I was almost asleep when I found it, under my pillow. A photograph I knew I hadn't packed. Me and Sophie. My little sister. Taken maybe a week before she'd died, before she'd overdosed in a city 3 states away, alone in a motel room, just another statistic in an epidemic nobody knew how to stop. Except she wasn't dead. Couldn't be. Because in the photograph, someone had drawn 3 interlocking circles in the corner. Constantine's mark. The same symbol from the picture slipped under my door. I ran to the living room. Vincent was on the phone, stopped mid-sentence when he saw my face. What happened? I showed him the photograph. Watched his expression go from concern to furious. Where did you get this? My pillow. It was under my pillow. He made a call, rapid-fire Italian. Then, no one's been in this apartment. I have cameras on every entrance, motion sensors, guards downstairs. No one could have. But they did, I said. And Vincent, that's my sister, my dead sister. We buried her 3 years ago. He took the photograph, studied it with the kind of attention he'd given Constantine's earlier message. "Emma," he said slowly, "when you say buried, did you see the body?" The question gutted me. There was a cremation. They said she wasn't recognizable. Overdose complications. I identified her from the tattoo on her ankle, from her dental records. Who handled the arrangements? Some victim services coordinator. I don't remember. I was in shock, grieving. I just signed whatever they put in front of me. Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it, and I watched color drain from his face. What? He turned the screen toward me. A video message from an unknown number. I pressed play. Sophie, alive, older, harder, but unmistakably my little sister, sitting in a chair in a room I didn't recognize, holding today's newspaper, the date clearly visible. She looked directly at the camera, spoke in a voice I'd thought I'd never hear again. "Emma," she said, "he says if you bring Vincent, he kills me first. Please, come alone." I couldn't breathe. Sophie, my Sophie, alive. The sister I'd mourned for 3 years. The guilt I'd carried like a stone in my chest. The what-ifs that had poisoned every quiet moment. All of it built on a lie. Vincent was already moving, making calls, pulling up files on his laptop. I stood frozen in the middle of his living room, that video playing on loop in my head. Her voice, her face, the newspaper with today's date like proof of resurrection. "Emma," Vincent's voice cut through the static in my brain. "I need you to focus. Tell me everything about Sophie's death." I told you. Overdose. Cleveland. Some motel off the highway. They said, "Who's they?" I tried to think past the shock, past the impossible fact of my sister's survival. A detective. Morrison, maybe. Morrison? He called me, said they'd found her body, that she'd been using fentanyl. Did you ever speak to the coroner? No. The detective said it was straightforward. Accidental overdose. Happens every day. He was kind about it. Walked me through everything. Helped me with the paperwork for the cremation, which you didn't arrange yourself. I couldn't afford it. He said victim services would cover it, that they had programs for families who... Vincent's jaw tightened. It's a common play. Stage the death, provide just enough documentation to make it convincing, prey on grief and shock so no one asks the right questions. By the time family members think clearly enough to be suspicious, months have passed. The trail's cold. But why? Why fake her death? Because dead girls don't need to be found. And girls who think they're dead, who've been erased from every system, every database, they're invisible, useful, easy to control. The implication made me sick. You're saying someone took her. Someone made her disappear. And I just believed it. You believed what you were told by someone impersonating authority. That's not failure, Emma. That's how the con works. But it felt like failure. Felt like I'd abandoned her, given up too easily, accepted the convenient narrative because questioning it would have meant admitting I'd already lost her years before, when she'd run away at 17 and I'd been too busy with art school, too absorbed in my own life to notice her drowning. Constantine has her, I said. That's what this is about. He's had her for 3 years. Yes. Then we get her back. Vincent closed his laptop, looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. It's not that simple. Why not? You have resources, connections. You run half the docks in Boston. And Constantine knows that. This video, this reveal, it's a trap. He's counting on you doing exactly what you want to do. Going to her. Bringing me. Giving him leverage he can use. So what? We just leave her there. No. We plan. We strategize. We don't walk into an ambush because emotion overrides logic. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to rewind 3 years and ask better questions. Push harder. Refuse to accept that my sister was just another statistic in an epidemic we'd all learned to normalize. Instead, I said, "Tell me the rules." Vincent blinked. "What? You said you won't lie to me, that I'm part of this. So tell me the rules. What are we doing here? What is this?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat on the couch, gestured for me to join him. I did, keeping space between us, needing the distance to think clearly. 3 rules, he said finally. You don't leave without security. You don't contact anyone from your old life without clearing it first. And you don't lie to me. About anything. Fear, doubt, plans you're considering. I need to know what you're thinking to keep you alive. That's control, not partnership. That's survival. Constantine doesn't play fair. He doesn't care about rules of engagement or innocent bystanders. He'll use anything, anyone to get what he wants. Which is what, exactly? What did you take from him that's worth all this? Vincent's expression darkened. Territory, money, respect. Take your pick. 5 years ago, I was part of his organization, learned everything from him. How to move product, how to buy loyalty, how to make problems disappear. And then I saw what it cost. Saw what he did to people who outlived their usefulness. So I left, took half his operation with me, built something better, something that doesn't traffic in lives. And he's been waiting for payback ever since. Constantine doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. I processed that. The weight of it. The years of looking over his shoulder. The reason he'd recognized threat in Marcus before I had. The way he moved through the world like someone who knew violence was always one wrong word away. You said 3 rules. What's my rule for you? He looked surprised. Your rule? You get 3, I get 1. That's fair. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. All right, what's your rule? Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I'm not made of glass. I'm not Adriana. I'm just tired of breaking alone. The words hung between us, more honest than I'd meant them to be. Vincent held my gaze, and I saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or respect. Deal, he said quietly. We sat in silence for a while, the city glittering below us, both of us thinking about a girl who'd been dead for 3 years and wasn't, about traps disguised as rescues, about the difference between saving someone and getting them killed. Constantine will reach out again, Vincent said. He wants something beyond just hurting me. The video, the photograph, he's building to an ask. And when he asks, we make him think we're playing his game, while actually playing ours. That's not a plan. That's a fortune cookie. He almost laughed. Almost. Tomorrow, I'll have my people dig into Sophie's disappearance, see what they missed 3 years ago, find out where she's been, who else is involved. Knowledge is leverage. And tonight? Tonight, you sleep, or try to. But I couldn't imagine sleeping. Not with Sophie alive somewhere, scared, waiting for a rescue that might be her death sentence. Not with Vincent's rules hanging in the air like promises we might not be able to keep. I stood, paced to the window. Vincent followed, stopped beside me. Close enough that I could feel his warmth, smell his cologne, something expensive and understated, like everything else about him. I need to tell you something, I said, about Sophie. All right, she didn't just run away. She ran from me, from our apartment, from my lectures about responsibility, from my judgment. I was 24 and so sure I had life figured out, thought tough love would fix her. Instead, I pushed her right out the door. You were 24. Not a parent. Not responsible for saving someone who didn't want to be saved. But I was her sister. That should have meant something. Vincent turned me to face him. His hands on my shoulders. Warm and steady. It did mean something. That's why you're here. Why you're willing to walk into Constantine's trap. Why you haven't run despite knowing how dangerous this is. I don't feel brave. Brave people usually don't. We were close. Too close. I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint stubble on his jaw, the scar that bisected his eyebrow. Could feel the tension between us shifting, changing into something I didn't have a name for. I stepped back, put safe distance between us. I should sleep, I said. Try to, anyway. Emma, thank you for not lying, for showing me how this works. He nodded. Let me go. I made it to the bedroom, closed the door, leaned against it with my heart racing. Not from fear. From something more dangerous than fear. The electric current that had passed between us. The awareness that protection could become something else if we weren't careful. I changed into my sleep shirt, climbed into bed that was too soft, too clean, too far removed from my real life, stared at the ceiling and thought about Sophie. Tried to remember the last thing I'd said to her before she left. Something about responsibility, about growing up, about how she couldn't keep running from her problems. I'd been so sure I was right, so certain my tough love would force her to change. Instead, I'd driven her straight into Constantine's hands. Sleep came eventually. Restless. Full of dreams where I opened doors that led to warehouses full of girls who all had Sophie's face, where Vincent's rules became chains, where my father's death wasn't an accident and my sister's survival was just another kind of dying. I woke to find Vincent asleep in the chair by my door, gun resting on his thigh, face unguarded in sleep, younger somehow, less weighted by whatever ghosts he carried, watching over me even in his dreams. I got up quietly, pulled a blanket from the closet, draped it over him. He stirred, hand moving instinctively to the gun, then relaxing when he saw me. "You should be in bed," he murmured. "So should you. Can't protect you from bed." Vincent. His eyes opened fully. Found mine in the darkness. "Thank you. For the blanket. I should have gone back to bed. Should have maintained distance, boundaries, the clear line between protector and protected. Instead, I touched his shoulder. Just once. Brief. A thank you that didn't need words. He didn't pull away, just nodded, something unspoken passing between us. An acknowledgement that we were both in deeper than we'd planned, that this had stopped being just about survival and started being about something neither of us knew how to name. I went back to bed, heard him shift in the chair, resettling. The sound should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt like safety. I slept better than I had in years. When I woke, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, Vincent was gone. But there was coffee on the nightstand, still hot, and a note in his precise handwriting. "Meeting with contacts about Sophie. Stay inside. Marco's outside if you need anything." I was drinking the coffee when Claudia arrived with breakfast and a file folder. "Mr. Moretti asked me to show you this," she said. Inside, photographs of Sophie. Recent ones. Her with Constantine at what looked like a restaurant. Her in expensive clothes, expensive jewelry, expensive settings. Her smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. And underneath the photos, a document, an autopsy report from 3 years ago, signed by a coroner who, according to Vincent's notes, had been disbarred 2 years later for falsifying documents. My sister hadn't just been taken. She'd been erased, made legally dead so no one would look for her. So Constantine could keep her as long as she was useful. I was still staring at the photos when my new phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was simple. "The warehouse on Northern Avenue, midnight tonight. Come alone, or I send you pieces of her." And attached, a photo of Sophie, current, holding today's newspaper again. But this time, I could see the fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind that knows what's coming and can't stop it. Below that, another text. "Vincent Moretti has taken enough from me. Time to balance the scales." I looked at Claudia. She'd seen the message over my shoulder, was already making a call. "He's proposing an exchange," she said quietly. "You for information about your sister, or you for her freedom. It's unclear. Then I'll find out at midnight. Emma, she's my sister. He wants me? Fine, he can have me. But Sophie goes free." Claudia's expression was sympathetic but firm. "Mr. Moretti will never allow that." Then Mr. Moretti doesn't need to know until it's done. I said it with more confidence than I felt. But the truth was simple. Sophie was alive because I'd failed her 3 years ago. I wouldn't fail her again. Even if it meant walking into a trap. Even if it meant becoming the very thing Vincent had tried to prevent. Collateral damage in a war that wasn't mine until it was. My phone buzzed again. Another message. A photo. Vincent's lieutenant. The one I'd seen at the docks. Beaten. Bloody. Unconscious. And text. "Just so you understand, this is what happens to the people he protects. Midnight. Alone. Or everyone you care about learns what pain really means." I looked at the photo of Sophie, at the warehouse address, at the clock counting down to midnight, at the symbol drawn in the corner of every message, 3 interlocking circles, Constantine's mark, the same mark that had been in my bedroom, on my pillow, watching me sleep. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about Vincent. Not really. This was about me, about Sophie, about what my father had known 15 years ago that had gotten him killed, about a debt that had been waiting for collection since before I understood there was a ledger. The evidence now pointed to Vincent, every camera angle, every witness statement Constantine would manufacture. The police would see a mafia war with civilian casualties. The media would run with the narrative of innocent girl caught between two criminals. And I was the only one who could clear Vincent's name, or destroy him completely. The memory came in pieces, like shattered glass reassembling itself into something sharp enough to cut. I was 14. Sophie was 9. Our father came home from the docks with blood on his knuckles and fear in his eyes. Real fear, the kind that makes grown men check locks twice and sleep with baseball bats beside the bed. "Emma," he'd said, kneeling in front of me, "if anything happens to me, you take care of your sister. Promise me." I'd promised, then forgot about it when nothing happened. When he went to work the next morning like always, came home like always, lived his life like always for 3 more months until the accident that wasn't an accident crushed him between shipping containers and erased every question I should have asked. Now, sitting in Vincent's penthouse with Constantine's ultimatum burning on my phone screen, I finally understood. My father had seen something, known something, and 15 years later, the debt was coming due through his daughters. I pulled up everything I could find about my father's death. News articles, police reports, the company's internal investigation that concluded equipment failure, operator error, tragic accident. All of it sanitized, neat, designed to close a case nobody wanted open. But in the margins, I found it. A witness statement from a dock worker named James Chen who claimed the equipment had been tampered with, who said he'd seen 2 men in expensive suits touring the dock the day before, asking questions about Frank Hartwell's schedule, who'd been willing to testify until he suddenly recanted, moved to Florida, disappeared from every database like he'd never existed. Vincent found me 3 hours later, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens, coffee gone cold, eyes burning from reading. "You should be resting," he said. My father knew something. About Constantine, about the docks. Something worth killing him for. Vincent's expression confirmed what I'd already guessed. "Yes, you knew. This whole time, you knew what happened to him and you didn't tell me. I knew after you called me, after I started digging into why Constantine would target you specifically. Your father witnessed a shipment he shouldn't have. Pharmaceuticals that weren't pharmaceutical. Containers that didn't match manifests. He was going to report it. And Constantine killed him. Constantine's people killed him. Made it look like an accident. Then spent 15 years making sure no one asked questions. The anger came hot and fast. You should have told me." "When? When you opened the door thinking I was delivering Chinese food? When Marcus was stalking you and you could barely function from fear? When exactly should I have said, 'By the way, your father's death is connected to the man trying to kill you'? He was right. I hated that he was right." "Sophie," I said. "She found out somehow. That's why she ran. That's why Constantine took her. She knew something." Vincent pulled up a file on his phone. Showed me a photograph of Sophie at 16, standing outside a library, talking to an older man I didn't recognize. "Detective Morrison," Vincent said. "The one who handled her death. He was on Constantine's payroll. Had been for years. We think Sophie was investigating your father's accident, started asking questions, and Morrison flagged her as a problem. So they made her disappear. They gave her a choice. Disappear willingly and live, or disappear permanently. She chose survival. I thought about my sister at 17. Angry, reckless, convinced the world had taken our father and no one cared enough to find out why. Of course she'd investigated. Of course she'd pushed too hard, asked the wrong questions, painted a target on her own back. The video, I said, her telling me to come alone. You think that's real or scripted? Both. Constantine's good at finding the truth inside the lie. She probably does believe you'll get killed if you bring me. He's probably convinced her that surrender is her only option. Then I go alone. Play it his way. Get her out. Emma, you said don't lie to you. I'm not lying. I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do." Vincent moved closer, not threatening, pleading. "You walk into that warehouse alone. You don't walk out. Constantine doesn't trade. He collects. So come with me. Bring your men. Turn it into the war he's expecting. And Sophie dies in the crossfire. He'll have someone with orders to kill her the moment my people show up. We were trapped. Every option led to loss. Every choice meant sacrifice. There has to be another way, I said. There is. We don't go. We disappear. Both of us. Let him have Boston, the docks, whatever he wants. Start over somewhere he can't reach. The suggestion hung between us. Tempting. Impossible. And leave Sophie? She's been his for 3 years. She's survived this long by adapting, by becoming useful. Harsh truth. She might survive better without a rescue attempt. The words landed like a slap. You want me to abandon her. Again. I want you to live. Sometimes that means accepting you can't save everyone. Is that what you told yourself about Adriana? Vincent went pale. I'd gone too far. Weaponized his grief, used his past against him. But I was drowning in impossible choices, and he was offering me a life raft that meant leaving my sister behind. I'm sorry, I said. That wasn't fair. It was accurate. He sat heavily on the couch. I did tell myself that. For months after she died, I convinced myself there was nothing I could have done differently. That Constantine was too smart, too prepared, that some people can't be saved. Do you still believe that? No. I believe I was a coward who chose survival over risk. And I've spent 5 years trying to forgive myself. The confession settled between us. Raw, honest, the kind of truth that only comes from people who've stopped pretending they have answers. My phone buzzed. Another message from Constantine, a video. Sophie, looking directly at camera, speaking in a voice scraped raw from crying. Emma, please. He showed me what he'll do if you don't come. Please. I can't. The video cut to black. Then new text. 8 hours. The warehouse. Alone. Bring Vincent Moretti and I'll make you watch her die slowly. I showed Vincent. Watched his expression cycle through anger, calculation, resignation. I have to go, I said. I know. You're not going to try to stop me? Would it work? No. Then I won't waste time trying. But Emma, I'm not letting you go alone. I'll hang back, stay out of sight. Insurance. He'll know. He'll have people watching. Let him know. Let him think he's predicted every move. Arrogance makes people sloppy. It wasn't a plan. It was barely a strategy. But it was all we had. Hope that Constantine's certainty would create gaps. That Sophie's survival instinct would help her recognize opportunity. That 3 years of captivity hadn't completely broken her ability to fight. Vincent made calls. Coordinated with his people. Set up contingencies and fallback positions. I watched him work and realized I'd stopped seeing him as my protector. Started seeing him as my partner. Someone who understood that some risks were worth taking even when the odds were terrible. Emma, he said, ending his last call. Whatever happens tonight, don't make it sound like goodbye. I was going to say thank you. For trusting me. For not running when you had the chance. Where would I run? This is my life now. Might as well face it. He crossed to me. Cupped my face in his hands. The gesture was tender, careful, like I was something precious he was afraid to break. You're not fragile, he said, echoing my words. You're the strongest person I know. Then he kissed me. Soft. Brief. A promise or an apology or both. When he pulled back, I could see the war in his eyes, wanting to protect me, knowing he had to let me choose my own risks. Midnight, I said. Northern Avenue. I'll be watching. The hours crawled. I tried to eat. Couldn't. Tried to rest. Couldn't. Tried to imagine a world where this ended well and couldn't manage that either. At 11:30, Claudia arrived with a bulletproof vest and a knife small enough to hide. Mr. Moretti's orders, she said. Wear the vest. Keep the knife in your boot. He thinks I'll need to fight my way out. He thinks you should have options. At 11:45, we left. Marco drove. Vincent sat beside me, silent, his hand finding mine in the darkness. The warehouse appeared like a wound in the city's side. Broken windows, rusted metal, the kind of place where violence happened and no one heard screaming. 2 blocks away, Vincent said to Marco. We'll walk from here. Vincent, 2 blocks. I'll have sight lines, enough distance to react. You go in alone like he demanded. We got out. The November cold bit through my jacket, Vincent checked his gun, checked his phone, checked me. Whatever he offers, whatever he threatens, you stay alive. That's the only rule that matters. What about Sophie? We get her out. But not at the cost of you. Understood? I nodded. Didn't mean it. We both knew I'd trade myself for her without hesitation. The walk to the warehouse took forever and no time at all. Vincent melted into shadows. I continued alone, each step feeling like walking toward an ending I couldn't see. The warehouse door was open, waiting. I stepped inside. Constantine stood in the center of the empty space, older than his photos, gentler looking, which somehow made everything worse. And beside him, wearing expensive clothes and a hollow expression I recognized from my own mirror, Sophie, alive, real, looking at me like I was a ghost she'd stopped believing in. "Hello, Emma," Constantine said pleasantly. "We have so much to discuss." Vincent didn't wait for my signal. The first shot shattered the warehouse's skylight. Glass rained down like stars falling, and Constantine's men materialized from shadows I hadn't known existed. 6, 7, maybe more, all with guns drawn, all moving with practiced efficiency. Sophie screamed. Constantine pulled her against him, used her as a shield, and I saw the truth in her eyes. Not fear of him. Fear for him. She wasn't his prisoner. She was his accomplice. "Sophie," I breathed. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were automatic, rehearsed. "Emmy, I'm so sorry, but you don't understand." Vincent's men poured through side doors. The warehouse became a war zone. Gunfire, shouting, the smell of cordite and terror. Vincent appeared beside me, grabbed my arm, tried to pull me toward cover. But I couldn't move. Couldn't stop staring at my sister, at the way she clung to Constantine like he was safety instead of poison. "She came to me," Constantine called over the chaos. His voice was calm, conversational, like we were discussing weather instead of violence. 3 years ago. Sold me information about her sister in exchange for a new life. "Tell her, Sophie, tell her how you've been watching her for years." Sophie's face crumpled. "He promised he'd keep you safe. Said if I helped him, he wouldn't hurt you. I just had to report back. Tell him about your life, your routines, who you cared about." "Marcus," I said. "The stalking. That was you." I gave him Marcus's gambling debts. Made sure Marcus knew approaching you would get them cleared. I thought if you had problems, you'd call Vincent. And then Constantine could finally... A bullet punched through the wall beside my head. Vincent shoved me down, returned fire with cold precision. His men were professional, controlled. Constantine's were desperate, sloppy. Within minutes, the tide had turned. "Get her out," Vincent shouted to Marco. "Now." But Constantine was already moving, dragging Sophie toward a back exit. I ran after them, heard Vincent curse behind me, heard his footsteps following. The alley was narrow, dark, stinking of rot and rust. Constantine had a gun to Sophie's head, was backing toward a waiting car. "Let her go," I said. "You want leverage? Take me. She's useless to you now." "She's been useless for months," Constantine agreed pleasantly. "But you, Emma, you're the one Vincent cares about, the one he'll trade everything to protect." Sophie here was just the appetizer. Sophie's eyes met mine. And I saw it, the tremor in her hands, the way she flinched when Constantine's grip tightened. 3 years of pretending she'd chosen this. 3 years of survival that looked like betrayal. "She's a prisoner," Vincent said quietly, appearing beside me. His gun was trained on Constantine, but his voice was gentle, just one who forgot she was in a cage. Something shifted in Sophie's expression. Recognition, or permission to stop pretending. She dropped, dead weight, pulling Constantine off balance. I didn't think, just grabbed Vincent's gun, fired at the chains holding a rusted fire escape above us. Metal screamed. The structure collapsed, crushed the space between us and Constantine, gave us seconds to run. We made it to Vincent's car, Sophie between us, all bleeding from somewhere. Vincent's shoulder, Sophie's temple, my hands from glass I didn't remember touching. Marco drove like demons were chasing us. Maybe they were. "Hospital," I gasped. "Safe house first," Vincent said. His face was pale, blood soaking through his jacket. "We clean up, assess, then medical. Hospitals ask questions. The safe house was a brownstone in Cambridge. Claudia met us with a first aid kit and a doctor who didn't ask for names. While the doctor stitched Vincent's shoulder, I sat with Sophie in the kitchen. Why? I finally asked. Because I was 17 and stupid and thought I could make them pay for killing Dad. She laughed. Bitter. Constantine found me first. Convinced me you'd stopped looking, that joining him was the only way to survive. I never stopped looking. I know that now. The doctor left. Vincent appeared, arm in a sling, face drawn with pain and exhaustion. The police, he said. They're calling it gang warfare. My face is on every news channel. They have witnesses placing me at the scene, saying I started it. But you didn't. Doesn't matter. Constantine owns half the precinct. They'll build a case, manufacture evidence. By tomorrow, there'll be a warrant. Sophie looked between us. I can testify. Tell them the truth. They won't believe you, Vincent said gently. You're legally dead. And even if they did, Constantine will destroy your credibility. The truth settled heavy. I was the only witness they'd believe, the only one who could clear Vincent's name or condemn him. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A single photo, Vincent and me, last night, his hand in mine. Text below, tell the truth or I release this. Show them who you really are. His accomplice. Choose carefully. Emma. Save him or save yourself. You can't do both. I left at dawn, told Vincent I needed air, needed to think, told Claudia I'd stay within the block, told myself I was doing the right thing even as every instinct screamed I was making the worst mistake of my life. But Sophie's friend Maya lived 3 miles away, and sometimes the only way to save someone is to stop waiting for permission. The apartment was in Dorchester, 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Maya answered wearing pajamas and suspicion. I don't know you, she said. But you knew Sophie, before she died, before she disappeared. Something flickered in her eyes. You should go. Please, I'm her sister, Emma. And she's alive and I need to understand what happened. Maya's resistance crumbled. She let me in, made coffee with shaking hands, told me things that rebuilt my entire understanding of my sister's last days. Sophie was going to testify, Maya whispered, against Constantine. She'd been gathering evidence for months, client lists, trafficking routes, payments to cops and politicians. She had everything. Then she vanished. He took her before she could. No. She went to him. Traded the evidence for a deal. He'd leave you alone, leave our father's memory alone, if she became his eyes and ears. She thought she was protecting you. The truth was worse than kidnapping. Sophie had chosen this. Chosen 3 years of captivity because Constantine had convinced her it was the only way to keep me safe. Where's the evidence now? Maya disappeared into her bedroom, returned with a key, an address written on torn paper. Storage unit. She rented it under a fake name, hid everything inside a teddy bear from when you were kids. I've been paying the rental fee for 3 years, waiting for her to come back, I guess. The storage facility was in Somerville. The unit was small, packed with boxes that smelled like abandonment. I found the teddy bear in the 3rd box, Mr. Whiskers, the one our father had won at a carnival when Sophie was 6. The flash drive was hidden inside, sealed in plastic. 3 years of evidence waiting for someone brave enough to use it. I called Vincent from a burner phone I'd bought at a convenience store. Emma, where are you? His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I have it. Everything Constantine's done. Everyone he's bought. Enough to bury him. Emma, listen to me. Come back. We'll figure this out together. I'm already on my way to meet him. What? No. That's exactly what he wants. You alone, unprotected. I hung up. Couldn't listen to his voice. Couldn't let him talk me into safety when Sophie had spent 3 years sacrificing hers for mine. The meeting place was a coffee shop in the North End. Public witnesses. The kind of place where violence was too obvious to risk. Constantine sat at a corner table, reading a newspaper like he had all the time in the world. I slid into the seat across from him, placed the flash drive on the table between us. You let Sophie go. No conditions, no surveillance, no debts, or this hits every news outlet in the country in 60 minutes. He smiled, slid the drive into his pocket without looking at it, then pulled out another one, identical. Your sister already gave me this. 3 days ago. She came to me, Emma. Handed over every copy she'd made. Begged me to leave you alone. Offered herself in exchange for your freedom. The world tilted. You're lying. Am I? He pulled out his phone, showed me security footage. Sophie, 3 days ago, walking into his office, handing him a flash drive, kneeling, begging. She's been trying to save you for 3 years, Constantine continued gently, and you keep trying to save her. It's beautiful, really, tragic, but beautiful. He stood, adjusted his coat, looked at me with something that might have been pity. Tell me, Emma, did you really think you were saving her? Or did you just need to believe someone still could be saved? He left, took both flash drives, left me sitting in a coffee shop with cold coffee and the crushing understanding that I'd been playing a game where Constantine already owned the board. My phone rang. Vincent, I answered. He has everything, I said. Sophie gave it to him days ago. We have nothing. Emma, where are you? I don't know anymore. Stay there. I'm coming. No, I'm done being rescued. I'm done letting other people fight my battles. If this ends, I end it. On my terms. I hung up, stared at my reflection in the coffee shop window, and started planning how to burn Constantine's world down, even if I burned with it. The real flash drive was still in my pocket, because I'd learned something from Vincent after all. Never bring the truth to a liar's table. What I'd given Constantine was vacation photos and music files Maya had prepared, enough data to look real without being useful. I'd gambled he wouldn't check immediately. That arrogance would buy me hours. I was right. By the time he discovered the deception, Sophie and I were already at the FBI field office on Cambridge Street, the real evidence copied to 17 different servers, with instructions to release everything if we didn't check in every 6 hours. The agent who took our statement was young, ambitious, hungry for a case that would make her career. Sophie told her everything: the trafficking routes, the falsified death certificate, the network of corruption that stretched from the docks to the State House. I corroborated with dates, locations, the names of men I'd seen at Vincent's warehouse meeting. And Vincent Moretti? The agent asked. What's his involvement? Sophie looked at me. I looked at the evidence spread across the table. 3 years of Constantine's crimes, none of which implicated Vincent in anything beyond existing in the same world. He protected my sister, Sophie said quietly. When Constantine wanted to use her, Vincent stepped in, offered shelter. He's not the villain in this story. The agent wasn't convinced, but the evidence was too solid to ignore, too detailed to dismiss. Within hours, warrants were being drafted. Constantine's empire began its slow, spectacular collapse. Vincent came to see me 2 weeks later. I'd moved back to my apartment. The landlord had mysteriously decided to forgive back rent, though we both knew whose money had made that happen. Sophie was staying with me while she worked on her GED, seeing a therapist twice a week, learning how to be a person instead of a ghost. He stood in my doorway the way he had that first night, flowers in hand, white roses again, eyes that still saw too much. You didn't need me to save you, he said quietly. You saved yourself, saved all of us. We saved each other. There's a difference. He stepped inside, set the roses on the same table where he'd placed them months ago. But everything else had changed. I'd changed. The apartment had changed. The distance between us had changed into something I didn't have words for. The charges against me were dropped, he said, thanks to Sophie's testimony. And yours? You were innocent. I was complicit. Maybe not in Constantine's crimes, but in the world that made them possible. I've been thinking about that. About what it costs to live the way I do. And I'm making changes. Legitimate businesses, legal channels. It won't happen overnight, but I'm trying to be someone Adriana would have been proud of. Someone you don't have to make excuses for. I crossed to him. Stood close enough to see the exhaustion in his face, the weight of transformation, the fear that change might come too late. I wasn't making excuses, I said. I was telling the truth. You're a complicated man who did complicated things to survive in an impossible world. That doesn't make you a villain. Just human. Emma. I kissed him. Not soft like last time. Not brief. A kiss that tasted like gratitude and goodbye and the possibility of something neither of us knew how to name yet. When I pulled back, his eyes were bright. I can't ask you to wait, he said. while I figure out who I am without all this? Good, because I'm not waiting. I'm living, painting, showing my work in galleries, being visible instead of invisible. But Vincent, I'm not closing the door either. No? No. You know where to find me. When you're ready. When you've become whoever you need to become. He nodded. Understood what I was offering. Space without abandonment. Freedom without forgetting. 3 months later, I stood in a gallery in the South End. My paintings covered the walls. Bold, raw, honest, self-portraits that didn't hide damage. Landscapes of Boston that showed beauty and brutality existing side by side. Sophie stood beside me, clearer-eyed than I'd seen her in years. Marcus was in jail for violating a restraining order. Constantine was awaiting trial on 17 federal charges. My life was mine again. The white roses arrived during the opening. No card. Just Vincent's handwriting on the delivery slip. Proud of you. I placed them in the window, next to the painting I'd done of him, not as he'd been that first night, but as I'd last seen him. Walking away. Choosing to let me go because that's what love looks like when it's real. Someone approached to ask about the painting. I smiled. It's about protection, I said, and freedom, and learning the difference. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, I finally felt like I belonged in my own skin. I'd opened the door expecting danger and found something more terrifying. Myself, reflected in someone else's belief that I was worth saving. And I'd learned the most important truth. I didn't need saving. I needed to believe I was worth fighting for. The rest was just details. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.